All right, good morning, everyone. Welcome to our administrative public meeting of this last day of August 2021. Our apologies for starting late. We were doing filming over at the public library, and I certainly underestimated the length of time it would take to walk here. So here we are. Violet, would you like to do roll call for us, please?
Yes, here in person, we have myself, Violet Plummer, Mel Fisher, Anna Conley, Brian West, and Commissioners Strohmeyer, Slotnick, and Vero. Calling in over Teams, we have Jason Kowalski, Kyla Leonards, Jackson Lee, Shane Stack, Jason Emery, Chris Lonsberry, Kira Maxwell, Ann Hughes, David Severson, Martin Kidston, Nicole Rush, Jamar Galbraith, and Tom Steenberg. Did I miss anybody? Okay.
All right, thanks, Violet. Is there any public comment on items not on today's agenda, either online or in the room? And if you're online, either wanting to comment right now or for any of the agenda items, when I ask for public comment, please use the raise hand function if you're in Microsoft Teams. If you're on the phone, hit *6 and that will unmute yourself. And I will try to acknowledge our queue up folks on the phone when appropriate. So let's just dive right into our action items for today. Our first one is brought to us with a staff report by Jackson Lee, and this is a request that the Board of County Commissioners approve a contract with Shadow Asphalt. Jackson.
Yes, good morning. So this contract would be for pavement improvements on shared use paths adjacent to Clements Avenue and South Avenue. And the goals of this project are to address damage caused by tree root upheaval and restore these paths to their original build specifications. Projected start date would be September of this year, end of September. And then a second phase is summer of 2022. And the majority of the project funding comes from the Montana State Trail Stewardship Grant.
Great, that's good news. Questions?
I have a comment because I move through this area with some regularity. These are heavily used paths at certain times of day by school children heading to target range school, other times of day by walkers, bikers, joggers. These are just heavily used paths on this side of town and will really be a benefit to all those folks.
Great. Thanks.
Tess, is that your motion?
Yeah, thanks. I'll make this motion item number 1.
Okay, thank you.
Second.
Any further discussion or public comment on the motion, online or in the room? Okay, seeing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Thanks, Jackson.
Thanks, Jackson.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Shane, we have Shane Stack. We have a request to authorize the chair to sign DNRC application, a DNRC application for change for the Lolo water system water rights. Go ahead and explain this, Shane.
I'm going to use pictures because they're better than words sometimes.
Thank you.
Let me know when you can see my screen.
There we go.
All right. So there's a couple of things that happen with this application if obviously if the DNRC approves it. This is just an image of the existing system within the Lolo community there. Are you guys able to see that okay? Do I need to make that a little larger?
I'm just gonna
Making a little larger and then a bit of explaining.
Yeah. So try to zoom in. Hopefully that's a little bit better.
Yeah.
So obviously this is Highway 93 through here, and you can kind of see the system is kind of split in two really by the highway, but there is some interconnectivity right here across the highway. And we have talked about making a second connection that would connect the kind of this eastern portion with this western portion, making more of a looped system. But the way it sits today, there's still a connection. We do have 2 wells located in this box here, well 1 and well 2. We also have in this boxed area here, we have another well called well 3. So I'm going to go to a different image just to kind of show you what we're looking at. I know this is very convoluted, but it's the image I have. So the area, you can kind of see these red and green dot here. That's well 1 and well 2 of this system. Well 1 is bound by yellow, and those are the water rights that well has. It has the ability to serve the customers in this area bound by yellow. Well 2 is bound by this gold or brown tan color. And that well is essentially has water rights to serve areas in that kind of shaded area or hatched area. And then well 3, you kind of see the blue area is where it has its water rights. So when we go back to this system here, you can see these are all interconnected. All these wells, even though they have boundaries on them, the water more than likely is actually, water well from well 1 and well 2 are probably reaching this area over here that would be served by well 3. So there's a couple of things that we're doing with this application. I'm going to go back to this bigger picture. One is we're going to basically request that well 1, well 2, and well 3 all have the same boundaries so that there's kind of no question as to whether well 1 and well 2 should be able to serve customers up in this area, or well 3, should it be able to serve customers over here. So kind of would clear that up. And not that it's an issue, but it's good to have it cleared up. The second thing that we're doing is you can see this area bound in purple. Not only are we going to expand the use of those water rights in the areas kind of bound in these hashed areas, but we're going to expand, or we're requesting that well 1, well 2, and well 3 all have water rights bound into this area in purple. So it extends those water rights out further beyond the area of Lolo, and that essentially allows for future growth in the Lolo community. And one of the things we've talked about is just making sure over the next 50 years that as Lolo grows, we're able to accommodate that growth with the sewer and water system. So I know that's a long explanation for a very simple application, but hopefully that answers any questions you may have.
Thanks, Josh.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Shane, for that. And so understand it right, what we're really talking about is expanding the service area and getting rid of the specific sort of segregated areas. Well 1 can only do this area, well 2 can do this, well 3. They can all work together and serve that entire area inside the purple. Is there also an expansion in the volume of water, or just the area we're serving?
I believe this one, Josh, is just the area we're serving. I believe we already have gone through that process of the water rights, or in that process of water rights.
So we have enough water.
Yeah.
This just expands the service area. And one thing, and now I'm slipping into comment, it's come up often that we aren't doing enough to make sure that our housing stock is as we need and make sure there are enough places for people to live. And I just want to point out, we are doing here what government can do, and that we're making sure that the infrastructure that housing requires is actually in place, not just for today and tomorrow, but we're looking towards the next 50 years, which is going to facilitate the creation of further housing in this area.
And this area has excellent water quality and volume.
Abundance,
Or abundance.
And the on one side of the coin is getting the water there. The other side is, what do you do with it when you're done? And we are actively working on expanding and updating the sewer system in Lolo, so it too will be ready for the next 50 years.
That is correct. Shane, so are these 3 wells adequate to serve that entire area, or do we have water rights of such a volume and the need to add an additional well or wells at some future point?
Yeah, great question, Dave. As I understand it, right now the wells right now have the capacity to serve this area and this area bound in purple. Obviously, that's going to depend on the density of that development, but right now it appears we have the amount necessary.
Okay, thanks, Shane. And just so folks on the line know, it's totally okay to have your cameras on, but just know that you will be recorded in perpetuity with your camera on as this meeting unfolds. So either way, I would ask that the speakers, though, definitely have their cameras on when they're presenting. So with that, would someone like to make a motion, or are there additional questions?
No, or sorry, did you have anything? I move that the board authorize chair to sign DNRC application for change for the Lolo water system rights. Water rights.
I'll second that.
Any further discussion or public comment? Is there anyone
Martin has his hand up.
I'm sorry, what was that, Violet?
Martin,
Martin.
let her rip, Martin.
Martin, was that an accidental extension of your arm
Oh,
or?
I can't.
Okay, can you hear me now? I'm sorry.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah, mute helps. Does this grant application, is it seeking a certain dollar amount to expand the system? And second question, is there a growth policy kind of guiding organized growth in Lolo, or is it kind of go as you wish down there still?
Not exactly go as you wish. It probably, the growth policy planning documents for the Lolo area need to be updated at some point. But Shane, do you want to jump in?
Yeah, I can speak on it. I guess the first question, Martin, and I think your question is about grant application, and this is just an application to change the use of the water rights. So it's not an application as far as grant funding. All it does is it allows the community water system to expand where that water can be used.
Thank you.
And Martin, as far as your second question, I'd recommend tying in with our planning staff to get the details on when our growth policy, or if there even is a specific area plan for Lolo was last updated. But like I say, it's probably in need of having the dust blown off of it. And unfortunately, I believe it is outside of the land use element planning area that we just went through, and also the update to our zoning that we are in the midst of right now. Any other questions or public comment out there? Okay, seeing none, let's go ahead and vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thanks, Shane.
Thank you.
Anna Conley, please come on up to the microphone and tell us about a contract with Legal Services for Child and Family Services Division, contract number as written.
Good morning. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Do I have two contracts on there?
Yes.
One in a pair.
Yes, you do. If you want to cover them both, that's fine.
Okay. So as you know, our office represents Child Family Services, which is part of DPHHS in proceedings to remove children from the home or terminate parental rights where there's dependent neglect and abuse. And we have two contracts with DPHHS to get some payment for the services that we provide that agency. The first one is Title 4E. That allows us to seek reimbursement for our costs, and through a number of co-pays and reductions, we end up getting about 30% of our actual costs back for Title 4E funds. To try to supplement that, we also have a paralegal contract where DPHHS pays us 100% of one paralegal plus fringe, so that's the $58,000. Every year I try my best to get more and more money out of DPHHS, but it's kind of like trying to squeeze water out of a stone. So I was unable this year to get an increase, but I did get a pretty sizable increase last year. So that's what you're seeing now. And we'll just keep trying to work on it. And I'm hoping that in the next legislative session, we can work with DPHHS to make sure that their appropriations process realizes how much counties have to foot the bill for these services.
Great.
So it's a one-year contract.
Okay, and does that cover both items, or is that just
That's both items, yeah.
items 3 and 4?
So a question on item 4, do we have enough money to retain good paralegals at this rate?
So we do, actually. I am really, really proud of our dependent neglect unit. I think we have the best attorneys and paralegals in the state. They have subject matter expertise that is unfound anywhere else. We have the lowest number of removals in any urban county because of how much we work on the front end with CFS staff. We're the second Indian Child Welfare Act court in the state, even though we have a low number of Native American children. It was important to us to ensure that their rights were being met at the highest standard. So we are working with Judge Deshaw with our Indian Child Welfare Act court. You couldn't have a better dependent neglect unit or a higher standard than what we have in our county. It's something for us to be really proud of.
That's great to hear.
Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah, thank you. All right, I would move we approve items 3 and 4.
Second.
Any further discussion or public comment or questions from the media? Okay, seeing none, let's go ahead and vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thanks, Anna.
Thank you.
Chris, do you have anything you'd like to add to item 5, which is an amendment to item number 3 of the employment agreement for an employee with Partnership Health Center?
So good morning, commissioners. Hopefully you can hear me. I'm doing a kind of combined voice over phone and video here. So this is just an amendment to the start date for an employee for Partnership Health Center. So no change in rate of pay, just as a reminder for everybody. Of course, Partnership is funded not by property tax dollars, but by their sliding fee scale and their ability to bill insurance as well as some federal grants. But this just changes the start date for a provider.
Thanks.
Great, thanks. A motion that the board approve amendment to item number 3 of the employment agreement between Sandra Benavides Valle, APRN, and Partnership Health Center, Missoula County, to amend the start date to September 20th.
I'll second that.
Further discussion or public comment? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Chris, you're up again. Daily
you,
rate of
Commissioners.
incarceration.
Yeah, actually, Jason, I entered this for Jason Kowalski, who's able to join us today, so he will walk you through that.
Jason,
Hey, good to see you, Jason.
welcome.
Hey, Jason.
Thank you. Glad to be here. This is a resolution for you guys to set the daily incarceration rate that an offender who's sentenced that has a fine associated with his sentence to pay off that fine by spending days in jail. That formula comes out to $143, and you're also agreeing that a person incarcerated to a imprisonment sentence gets credit for time served in our jail prior to that conviction and any days he spends or she spends after conviction in our jail. It's pretty simple. It's something that per MCA, you guys are supposed to set and agree to on an annual basis.
What was last year's?
Close. I mean, they all seem to be just tending up slightly every year as the budget increases. Last year, the number was a little bit lower because we had less inmates in jail this past year because of COVID. So as the formula is based on the total budget divided by the total number of inmate days. And so if the number is lower because of inmates, then the rate actually increases.
Okay, thanks.
Anna, do you have something you'd like to share?
Yeah, I just want to clarify that this is not the DOC rate.
Right.
This is not the rate that we have incurred costs for inmates who are DOC. This is the rate for non-DOC inmates on the county side who are getting credit for time served. So it's a completely different formula, completely different number.
If only we were getting this much from the state.
I know, wouldn't that be? And this is actually money that the inmate, they kind of work off their fine, so to speak, by remaining in jail.
Right.
That's correct.
Okay, any other questions or anything else you want to add, Jason?
Nope.
Thank you.
So just as a sort of process, do we need to say that number in this number 6?
It probably would not hurt. What's the number again, Jason?
$143 per day.
All right, I would move that we set the daily rate for incarceration at $143.
Per day.
Second.
Any further discussion or public comment or questions from the media?
I'm sorry, Jason, we do this every year. I just I don't remember doing this last year.
I think I must have missed this the last 5 years because I have no recollection of having done this, so.
We may be playing catch up, although we do update the number annually.
Yeah, I was just going to echo what Jason said, that Gary Elliott does create this calculation every year. It's just failed to come to you as an actual annual resolution, but it will from now forward. And the calculation is done and has been done every year for the last several years. It's just this piece
That's
is
correct.
missing and it won't be anymore.
Okay.
Great, thanks.
Thank you.
Excellent.
Thanks for the cleanup.
My
Thanks for taking the time, Jason.
Yep, you bet. Thank you guys.
glad to be affirmed that my memory is not any worse than it is. Okay. And my memory is so bad. Did we just vote on this?
We did, I think.
No, Brian West says we have.
Brian
one.
West.
Attorney says we have,
All right,
okay,
let her rip, sir.
okay, motion.
Second.
Any further discussion or questions from the media or public comment? Seeing none, let's go ahead and vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Next, we have an appointment we need to make to Senate District 50, a seat vacated by State Senator Bryce Bennett. Chris, would you like to recap for us where we have been in this process and what is before us today?
Absolutely. So commissioners, as you know, when a Senate or House seat becomes vacant, the person who's vacating the seat notifies the Secretary of State, and the Secretary of State then notifies the party from which that person is resigning. So in this case, it was Senator Bryce Bennett, who resigned from his seat to take a new position in Washington, D.C., and the Democratic Central Committee began their process to put forward 3 names to the Board of County Commissioners. They had 45 days to do that. And then from receipt of the names, you have 15 days to select from those 3 or to request 2 additional names. So you were able last week to interview the 3 candidates that were put forward by the Democratic Central Committee. You've also been taking some public comment that's come to the commissioner's email. Just as a quick recap of that, there were about 10 emails split evenly between requests for you to fill it with either Representative Olson or Tom Steenberg, who is no longer in the legislature, was a representative, as well as the former chief of the fire department here in Missoula. So that's where we are today. And so before you is the request for you to decide if those 3 candidates are adequate, or if we need to request 2 more from the Democratic Central Committee. And if you're ready then to make a decision, we have a few more days before our 15-day timeline if we're not quite ready to make a decision. I would encourage you to consider altering the normal steps in our public process. In this case, you may want to take public comment before you deliberate on this, just in case there's anybody out there who is wanting to provide that before you begin making a decision.
Thanks, Chris. So with that, is there any public comment either here in the Sophie Moise room or from folks joining us on the phone or via Microsoft Teams on the 3 candidates for Senate District 50? And if you're online, please raise your hand and we will call on you in the order in which you do so. Is there anyone on the phone? In which case, unmute yourself, *6, and just start talking. Okay. Any questions or discussion on the part of the commission?
I'd love to have a comment and then throw something out.
Yeah,
My
let's do
first
that.
comment was something that Chris let us know when we began this process, that this wasn't an HR process where we were hiring someone and we had to ask each person the same structured set of questions as we've been through any time. This was a political appointment, which allowed us the freedom to have some really kind of broad-ranging conversations with 3 super smart, interesting people who all have led exemplary lives of public service. And I really appreciate all that we learned from nations. I think it went really well and that we learned a lot. And we were blessed to have 3 super solid people come before us.
Yeah, thanks to the Democratic Central Committee for forwarding these 3. It was blessed is great word.
Yeah. And I'd love to make a motion, but I'm open if you were about to as well.
No, go ahead. Let's discuss.
Well, and I don't know what the motion is that you'll make,
yeah.
but I will just throw in some additional commentary here in that we've gone through this. Certainly in my time on the Board of County Commissioners, I've gone through this a few times. And it's always a bit of an awkward place to be because the 3 of us are serving as proxy for all of the voters in Senate District, in this case, Senate District 50 or whichever legislative district that we are trying to fill the vacancy in. So what weighs heavily on me is not only trying to best represent the will of the voters when they have not cast a vote yet. And in this case, the saving grace is that we are filling the position during this interim period, and there still will be an election before the next legislative session.
Yeah.
So there is that. But also my standard practice in the past in the spirit of acting as a proxy for the voters who put the person in place who has now resigned, is to weight very heavily the input from that person who was in that position previously, and that was Bryce Bennett. And Bryce is on record as of last night in supporting Tom Steenberg in this position. But just something to throw into the mix.
Yeah,
And with that,
thanks,
Josh,
Josh.
is there a motion that you'd like to make?
Yeah, and the one piece I just wanted to reiterate, and the strangeness of this, and you pointed it out, is we're going to appoint someone to serve in the Senate, and they will not serve in the Senate because they'll have to go through an election. So it's a bit of a placeholder, and the voters will get to have their
Ultimately make that decision.
ultimately make that decision. So, but with that, I would move we appoint Tom Steenberg to this position.
And because we were able to have this sort of free form and ranging interview process, I really appreciated Tom's relaxed confidence and his demonstrated humility. And so yes, I'll second that.
Is there any further discussion or public comment? And I would say also that all three of these candidates would do a fine job, and this is not an easy decision on our part. All three of them have articulated an interest in running for this position, so which is not uncommon when folks are applying for these vacant seats. But I would certainly encourage whoever we do not select today to absolutely consider throwing your hat in the ring and running for either Senate District 50 or any other position in the legislature, because we need good people in the state legislature.
Yep, and all three absolutely are committed to good government and creating and nurturing that a government that serves the people and environment of Montana. So we ultimately, I can't make a bad decision here.
So any further discussion on the motion to appoint Tom Steenberg to fill the vacant seat in Senate District 50 vacated by former State Senator Bryce Bennett? Okay, seeing none, let's go ahead and vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, congratulations, Tom Steenberg, and thanks so much for stepping up and throwing your hats in the ring, Representative Andrea Olson and Dave Severson. With that, is there any correspondence we need to discuss today? Okay, we have a couple discussion items. One being a BCC recommendation to the Montana Department of Commerce regarding how to count remote workers in ATG/Cognizant. This is a Big Sky Trust Fund grant contract. And okay, there we are. Hi, Nicole.
Right on
Good
time.
morning.
Yes. Please bring us up to speed.
Sure. So I'll give you some background on this. As you recall, ATG and Cognizant have been the recipients of multiple BSDF grants. They've pretty much had one continuous grant awarded in many iterations since 2013. When the previous grant was awarded, and so not the one that is currently in effect now, but the prior one, the county generously petitioned the Department of Commerce to allow ATG to include some of the people that they were hiring that were remote workers outside of Missoula County to be counted as created jobs and under their last grant. So you made the recommendation that 25% of those new hires that were, that up to 25% of the jobs that they were awarded to create, which of the last grant was 68 total, of those 68 new hires, 25% of them could be remote workers outside of Missoula County. And, kind of the reasoning around that was that ATG, is really committed to its headquarters, status in Missoula, but as they, are trying to hire as many people as they can, They are, you know, have this strategy that that does focus on hiring more and more remote workers. And this is sort of kind of the direction that a lot of tech companies in Montana are going these days. Of the 229 people who currently work at ATG, only 12 of them are actually remote workers. So this amount of their workforce is not huge, but you know, this was a request that the county made to the state to accommodate their, you know, ATG's hiring strategy, and it was approved. And so we got through our last grant successfully with them counting some remote workers. And but I think what has happened now is that we now have a new grant in effect, and Commerce didn't really think through all of the ramifications of that remote worker request. And one of the issues that we're running into now is that, so during the last grant, they hired a number of people who were remote. Those people were counted as net new jobs, and they were reimbursed, you know, as we all requested. And now ATG, or the state, is not sure how to count and track those people who were hired previously in the baseline. So one of the issues is that previously, when, you know, under kind of the old rules of running these grants, when an employee who was counted as part of the baseline, so the current workforce that was in place before the grant started, not a new hire, but when someone in that baseline employee list went remote, like, so let's say that they moved out of Missoula County and but they kept their job at ATG and they stayed remote, so it's not like they left the company, but when that job went remote and transferred outside the county, that would be considered a lost job. And now we have that is actually what has happened in the last set of grant reports. We have someone from the baseline who has gone remote, and Commerce is trying to figure out how to track, you know, how to approach that. So and how does that remote status affect all of the employees in the baseline? So they're wondering about what the county's intention was in making that request, and want to, like, understand, you know, kind of the approach that you are taking in assisting this company.
So
Yeah.
So Nicole, and this is a little bit convoluted, but so what we were speaking to in the last contract, or the one that's in question here, where we essentially approved a percentage of their new hires to be remote workers. How does that relate to the baseline? On the one hand, it seems like it's is it irrelevant? I mean, if someone prior to this contract for the 68 workers and the reimbursement, prior to that occurring, if other employees change their status, does that have any? What's the bearing of that? Because is not our, for instance, our liability tied up with the contract to add new workers and reimburse them for those, not with whatever they started with at some point in the past?
So the baseline only affects our count of net new, in that every job that is considered lost from the baseline, so usually this would mean an employee who quits or is terminated and is actually not employed by the company, that ATG has to backfill that position before they can count any new jobs. So, you know, so a job created isn't just a new person hired, it's the overall count of their total employment, and every new job is actually an increase to that number. So if they have a baseline of 229 and someone, you know, quits, it goes down to 228, they have to get up to 229 again before we can continue to count net new. And so when an employee, if they consider a remote worker or someone who goes remote from the baseline as, as a job loss that has to be replaced, then that does affect the company's ability to fully, count all of their workforce and fully draw on the grant, depending on their pace of growth.
They're remote workers for the baseline. Were there any remote workers in the baseline?
Right. So we have 12 remote workers right now who were counted in the baseline.
And they're considered employees, right? Well, I mean, they were
yeah, they are employees regardless of where they're working. It's just that the Department of Commerce considers them not relevant or not considered an employee for this grant if they happen to be working outside Missoula County. Because
there's 12 who are now remote, and a portion of them are folks that were in the baseline that went from here in Missoula to remote.
They may still be living in Missoula. They're just remote. Is that correct or no?
12 that are actually considered remote are working outside of Missoula County. They are mostly in western Montana, but they are outside.
Baseline consisted of 12 employees as well?
I don't think so.
Baseline, how of the, would you say 200 and something?
29?
220 baseline. Remote workers.
12 of them are remote. Yep.
Okay.
So the 12 that are remote, though, just so I'm clear on this, which I may not be at the end of the question still, is the 12 include some folks within the baseline and some in the contract that
so
we
the
approved.
12 is actually only part of the baseline. They have hired a number of new jobs. Some of those are remote. They haven't yet hit the cap yet that we have on their remote workers to be counted as net new. So they haven't, and I forget how many of their new hires are remote, but there are.
So recap for us what's before us, and what is, I guess, what's the, we have the plain language of what we agreed to in our letter to Commerce and in the contract as far as the 25% goes. And what's your recollection of what we decided previously? Was it expansive in terms of the totality of their workforce, base and contract, or what?
So my sort of sense of all of this and takeaway is that broadly we were trying to support ATG's direction while wanting to see most of their growth take place in Missoula County. Of course, we sort of understand that when an employer is headquartered here, despite if they have a somewhat dispersed remote workforce, those people are probably still traveling in to Missoula regularly to do meetings or trainings or whatnot, and that overall the fact that ATG's growth does include a strategy for remote workers can only be of the benefit of rural communities, especially in Montana, and wanting to kind of consider the whole region, of, or sort of the footprint of ATG as being larger than the county, but still being centered in Missoula County, and wanting to kind of support that direction. And so what I think, Commerce has sort of laid out some options, but I feel like they are getting a little bit too hung up on, their sort of this individual question of counting, and looking at wanting to kind of run this grant program the way it's always been run and not being able to kind of accommodate some of these shifts and changes. What I would like to see recommended.
Yeah, tell us what you'd like to see.
Yeah, what I would
we got less than 1 minute to come to consensus.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'll try to be brief. I would like to see us recommend that they disregard jurisdiction when it comes to the baseline, that we just count the number of Montana employees as the baseline, and that if and within that baseline, so not considering the net new people, but that we not focus so much on whether an individual job in that baseline is remote or not, and that we should only really consider having to backfill those positions when they actually leave the company. So if they go remote,
The 25% would apply to the net new employees only?
right.
Okay, so what do you think? Are we good?
And we're expanding the boundary from Missoula County to the state.
For the baseline.
For
the baseline,
for the
right,
discussion about
yeah.
the baseline. Yeah.
I mean, part of me doesn't like this so much, but not that I would say I go against it, but this is
Well,
a county thing, and this brings more money and more economic activity into our county.
This is just for the baseline, right? The baseline, if I'm understanding, baseline, it's for Montana, doesn't matter. But going forward with new employees, 25% of them can be remote out of Missoula County. The rest are in Missoula County. So
Is that
correct?
That's what I'm hearing is going forward. So the baseline,
Can live
Fo-
anywhere.
folks could be in Missoula or could work remotely somewhere in Montana for the net new jobs. A maximum of 25% can be remote in the state of Montana. Is that?
That's what I'm recommending. Yeah.
Okay.
That's-
Great.
I'm fine with that.
Okay.
I gotta be across town.
Okay.
Good
Thank
luck.
you.
All right. So Nicole, whatever it takes to, I'm suspecting that Commerce will want to meet up to discuss this, and I would be more than happy to participate in that meeting if you want to kind of take it from here.
Great. I'll set up a call with them and you and I, Dave. How about?
Okay, sounds great. Thanks, Nicole. Appreciate
Thank you so
that.
much.
That's not straightforward. Okay. Is there anyone on the line who wants to talk about wildfires? I think the air is relatively clear out there today.
So commissioners, I don't believe there is, and we will pull that off the agenda now that we've come out of stage 2 restrictions.
Thanks.
Okay, thank you. We might have to put COVID back on as a standing item, unfortunately. Anything else that we need to discuss today? Okay, thanks everyone for joining us. We'll be adjourned.